Hello, everyone. This is Loretta Sernowski from Remax Fine Properties. Welcome to another edition of Living in Arizona. Today, we have a very timely, apparently the time is about to come when the snakes are going to be hanging out or more visible than other times. So we have an expert today. Bryan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, hi. My name is Bryan Hughes. I own a company here in Phoenix. We service Tucson as well, called Rattlesnake Solutions. And there's a lot of different aspects to what we're doing, but the name is very literal. If somebody has a rattlesnake in their yard or doesn't want them to be in their yard, there's a number of things that we do to address that. We also do a lot of field research that those efforts go to fund. So basically, I'm just around rattlesnakes all the time. So it's a fun life.
Before we hop into the logistics of that, can you tell us a little bit about your background? I know that you changed careers quite a number of years ago.
Yeah. So I was a hobbyist for a long time. If you've ever known anyone that goes birding, it's kind of like that, where you're just traveling around, spend all your disposable income looking for animals. I have done that with reptiles, and there's a lot of people that do that. Actually, a surprise to people. But just from the time I was a kid until now, that's how I spend my free time, is out looking for animals and learning about them. And then when the housing market crashed in 2008 or so, I was like many people that found myself without a job. And so it was kind of an all skills on deck situation. And I figured I can use my knowledge of reptiles to start a service, because what I was working in was marketing. And if you know how to do marketing and brand building, you can probably make a business out of anything. And it was something made to pay the phone bill or something. And over the next 7 years from then, I was able to grow it to the point where I was able to quit my career, which I did love, but I love this more, to focus on this full time. And it's really just taken off since then. As Phoenix grows, the need for services like ours grows.
And were you a photographer before? Is that what you did before in your marketing?
Yeah, that's the way you kind of get your trophy, I guess, is you go out and you look for a snake and you find the snake, and you don't want to take the snake. So you just take some pictures of it. And over time you realize, oh, maybe photography is fun too. So I think there's a lot of overlap. Like, all birders are also photographers, and a lot of people that look for snakes are also photographers. It's just a way to safely and sustainably capture and share what you've found.
And what's the wild first call story that hooked you on this unique business?
Oh, the first call.
Yeah.
Well, my first ones weren't all that exciting. I mean, there's one notable time I did some volunteer work for the Arizona Herpetological Association for a number of years in the early 2000s, when they had a snake hotline that's somewhat similar to ours. We go out and get a snake in someone's house and let it go. And I think it was right after I was laid off from my art director job from I was 2009 or so, early 2009. Somebody called me and they had a coach whip in their garage. It was a baby coach whip. It's a little harmless animal, goes away. And at that time, I'm just really thinking about business ideas to figure out what to do next. And I realized that not only the person that I was catching the snake for, she was terrified of the situation. There's a lot of emotions in that garage that day. And I'm holding the snake, and I realize I have the knowledge to calm her down, to talk to her about this, and tell her some things she can do so she doesn't see another one. And you realize at those moments, like, wow, this is a niche that needs to be addressed, and I feel I have the knowledge and skills to be able to do that. So that was a notable call. Even though it was a small, harmless snake, it was one where I kind of realized, like, oh yeah, I should be doing this.
Right. Oh, that's great. Well,
Mhm.
as you know, I'm Canadian, realtor here
Oh,
in Arizona. And this is important for me to pass on to my clients because I deal with a lot of snowbirds.
yep.
And especially when people are first time to the valley, they really don't understand anything about snakes. And there's definitely that fear that you talked about. Um, so Arizona has more rattlesnake species than anywhere, don't they?
Yeah, we do. So we have just huge diversity of habitats. We have 4 different deserts converging in our state. We have the Grand Canyon. We have influence coming in from the Madre Mountains in Mexico. There's just a lot of things happening, and it's warm most of the time. So you put all that stuff together, there's just a lot of opportunities for reptiles to speciate and specialize over many years. So when you have an area as big as the Phoenix Metro Valley, um, that means that there's a lot of diversity that happens just right there too. I mean, the city is so big that there are rattlesnakes that are found in mountains on one side of the valley that are not found in mountains on the other side of the valley. So those ranges change dramatically during that time.
Can you walk us through some of the most common snakes that we would encounter, and depends where you live?
Yeah, the biggest one that people are going to run into is a Western Diamondback rattlesnake, and it just happens to be a rattlesnake. But part of the problem is just how big they are. They're detectable, and they make a lot of noise. And they're also of specialists, which rattlesnakes are. They're kind of generalists. So they move around a lot. They get, people are worried about them, so they talk about them a lot. That's probably the most common one. Probably the second most common would be Sonoran gopher snake. It looks a lot like a diamondback to people that aren't knowledgeable about that, but it's another big snake. And there's a theme there between these things, is that even though those may or may not be the most common snakes in any given area, how quickly they can be seen or how detectable they are really influences how common we think they are. So you'll probably hear me say this elsewhere in this, and it's a theme that'll come up, is that a snake encounter takes 2. It's not just the presence of the snake, it's the observer. So what we're doing and the way we build our homes and maintain our homes and what we do on trails, that has just as much to do or more with whether or not we're going to encounter a snake than what the snakes are doing.
Okay. I know when I'm showing property, one of the things my buyers often ask about is snake-proof fencing. How does that work, and what's the return on investment for desert homeowners?
Sure. So this is a thing that we're actually starting to see show up more in when people are putting out bullet points on a home that they're putting up for sale, which is kind of what we were hoping for, because it really can help a lot. So snake fencing is basically something that we really developed once we started doing this. And it came from, we were going to yards a lot and seeing that there were rattlesnakes in backyards with steel mesh and chicken wire that the landscaper put up to keep rattlesnakes out. The problem is, and as evidence of us being there, it wasn't working at all because they weren't taking into account the physiology and behavior of rattlesnakes, right? So we've modified that, and it's something that we more specifically call rattlesnake fencing. So all of this is a series of modifications to gates, drains, blocks to make a perimeter around a backyard or a courtyard that rattlesnakes are unable to get through or climb into. So this is something that has been really refined in recent years, and is showing up more and more often in CCNRs from HOAs, where they all kind of understand that people seeing rattlesnakes in their backyard is not a thing that most people are asking for when they're moving to Arizona. They want, a pool and a nice spring day, not necessarily the things that come with that.
So is that material still like the mesh one? And the one at the house I saw, it just didn't seem to go up that high. Like, I just thought, well, won't a snake go over that, or no?
Yeah, it could be, you could have been seeing some of the bad stuff. And that's one of the problems with it right now, is that it's not currently a thing that is regulated by any state agency. So we're looking to change that. But I can give you the dimensions basically of what to be looking for. And if you're talking to a homeowner and they have it installed at their property already, these are really easy ways that they can tell if what they have is actually going to work. So the first one of those is the height. You want it to be a minimum of 30 inches above the nearest ledge that it can get on. So if there's a view fence that has a block wall and then the view fence starts here, it starts where the nearest surface is. So minimum 30 inches, we want 36. So someone has a 2-foot tall fence, it's not working. Snakes and rattlesnakes climb over it. You want to have it a maximum all the way around the entire property of minimum of 1/4 of an inch. 1/2 inch baby rattlesnakes can get through. We've done a lot of testing with different species to do this. And then the last most important factor is that it has to be the entire perimeter. They can't just do the back gate. They got to do or back fence. They have to do the gates and all the places that they don't think they're going to come into, or else you can actually increase your chances of a snake encounter. So it's a pretty complex system, aside from all the aesthetics and all that's going in.
Is there a cost per square foot of that for that?
Yes,
How
and
do they
that
get?
so that varies depending on what it's going on to. So if we're installing mesh onto a concrete block on some new view fence that we don't have any problems with vegetation, it takes less time to do than if it comes down to the ground, in which case we need to trench, and that can add some cost. But trenching is always labor intensive, especially in some of the areas around the valley where you have either really, like out in Rio Verde, you have really soft soil and you're in a floodplain. So we need to go down very deep to make sure that we can get what we need to have done. And also in some places in Scottsdale or in Peoria, there's houses built up into schist and really hard rock and caliche. So that takes more time to dig into. So the cost per foot varies quite a bit. It's not so much the material, it's the time it takes to do it correctly.
Okay, let's talk about relocating snakes.
Sure.
Do they really leave, or do they boomerang back to where they were?
Depends on how it's done, and that's going to be this is one of the common problems that we've encountered with this whole rattlesnake service thing as we're developing this. Is that so you might notice that there's people that call the fire department when they see a snake. And this is not something I'm saying because we have a service that competes with that. This is biologically sound principle. I would not do that, because putting a snake into a bucket and carrying it away is not the job to do. That's easy to do. For us, when we catch the snake, that's when our work begins. We are looking for what we call habitat modification through release site, capture site emulation, which means if we catch a snake and it is like we are going to today, like right now, there's someone doing this on our line, catch a snake that's hibernating in a garage. If we just take it out and dump it in the desert across the street, which is what the fire department does, yeah, it's going to come back because it doesn't know what to do. It's seeking certain things. But if we take it out, we examine maps, we look at the natural history of the species for what it's looking for, and we find another spot that emulates the situation of capture, then that snake is going to incorporate that in there, and coming back is much less likely. Even more so if the homeowners take our advice. Right now, every day we're going to get rattlesnakes in garages. The thing that they're not realizing is most of those have been there for months, and all they need to do to prevent it is to fix the door seal. That's it. So the snake in those cases is a symptom, and you have to eliminate the problem, which is the access to the garage. So if you look at it as more of an aspect of wildlife biology and a job that is a wildlife biology job rather than pest control or something, then no, they're not going to come back. But it requires that depth to do so.
So this begs the question: is your line like a 24-hour line?
Yeah. Yeah, 24-hour line.
In the morning, they found a snake in their garage.
Yep. I built an app that's kind of like Uber for rattlesnakes. So when someone calls our hotline, it goes into a distribution system. So there's always somebody that is awake, usually more than one, ready to go. I mean, during the times that were active changed throughout the year too. And over the last 15 years, we've accumulated a tremendous amount of data, 22,000 instances. So we're able to not only tell when we need to be staffing up, when people are going to be seeing snakes, but when they're likely to do so, just based on those historic data. So yeah, someone can call us. If it looks like it's going to be early at 5 o'clock, busy at 5 o'clock in the morning, like it is in July or so, then we got 3 or 4 people ready to go.
And is that app called Rattlesnake Solutions?
Yep, it's Rattlesnake Solutions. They can go there. It's more of an internal app. They can call us. We're working on something so people can just request the service online, like you're ordering a pizza. The only problem with that we're running into is not one of technology. It's that a lot of these situations that we find ourselves in can be solved through just information. So if somebody calls and they see a gopher snake crawling across their driveway, it's a harmless snake. It's going away. They don't need to pay for someone to come out and do it. So we don't feel like we should We should at least try to talk them out of it, which makes me the worst businessman in the world, but at least I can sleep at night,
Yeah, of
Um,
course. And so you talked about you had a lot of data. Can you share some of your top field biology findings from the Phoenix Mountain Preserve?
Sure. So one of the things that's interesting in those areas is that, probably the most relevant to your audience is that development is one of the main drivers of encounters with rattlesnakes. So in the Phoenix Mountain Preserve, and for everyone that's listening, those are Camelback Mountain, Piostra Peak, all those mountains you drive through and wonder if there's still rattlesnakes there. There are many rattlesnakes there, but the rate of encounter of homeowners around the perimeter of that running into them in their yard is much lower than it is in other places that even have smaller species diversity, like Peoria or Scottsdale. And basically, what happens is every time new ground is broken on a huge community and the ground gets bladed and the situation changes, all the animals that are there are displaced or need to remap where they live. And it's not only the ones that are there, it's the ones coming in. So that's something that, looking at the study in the preserve over the years, we've been able to publish on this, is that the rate of encounter is much lower in those stable environments. So as a neighborhood ages, the conflict with wildlife can decrease, even if all that wildlife is still there. But it requires homeowners that are knowledgeable about how to deal with this situation, and we can live, as cheesy as it might sound, we can peacefully coexist in these spaces, and it's very possible to do that.
Okay, let's talk about hiking in Arizona.
Sure.
I think that's everyone's concern, especially when they come to visit or move to the valley and want to go for a hike. Do you have that fear of running into a snake? So beyond staying on the trails, what's your advice to people, and what do they do when they encounter a rattlesnake?
So the first thing is, and on my Facebook, I'm getting comments and messages about what do I do? What do I do? I'm so scared of snakes. So it's great question, because this is everyone's mind. The first thing I would say to everybody is, for all the people that say, okay, snakes are out, I'm no longer hiking anymore, you don't need to do that. Because you have to realize that the fear that you're feeling, it does not really align with the actual danger that's there. Most hikers can avoid dangerous encounters with rattlesnakes by just keeping their eyes open and not wearing headphones. Rattlesnakes are pretty visible. They don't want anything to do with you. And they have a built-in warning system. If you get too close, they may rattle at you, or they're going to stay hidden. But the odds of somebody just walking down a trail and being bitten by a rattlesnake they don't see are relatively low. I'm not saying it doesn't happen or it can't happen, but if you were to put it more in the category of like dangers that people encounter on a trail, falling down, not drinking enough water, not wearing the right hat and the wrong clothes and getting in trouble that way, bees, choking on trail snacks, like those are all things that have a much higher death rate. So I would say, I'm not going to say anything that's going to make someone that's really fearful of snakes not fearful of snakes, but you can get information to help you reconcile that. And I can say that the average death toll from rattlesnakes in Arizona in the last 10 years is 0. And the number of deaths in Arizona from rattlesnakes in the last 10 years is 0. So it doesn't deserve that from you. It doesn't deserve to make you stop being active and getting exercise and enjoying our weather for something that is in our heads. And you can look, you can be bitten by a rattlesnake. It happens. It is something that happens. It's very treatable. It's something that's very preventable. And
let's talk about getting bit by a rattlesnake. You happen to have your headphones on and you get bitten. What's the first thing that you should do?
You call 911. Okay. And that could be the end of the list. For hikers that spend a lot of time out where there's no service anywhere, then the question is, well, put in your plan that you put in place to contact somebody. Oh, you don't have a plan? That's how that conversation really goes. So satellite texting is a common feature now on any of the latest iPhones, and a lot of the Android devices have that now. Anyone on T-Mobile, I believe, has satellite texting. And you also have things like Garmin devices and all that. But call 911, do whatever they say. If it's something that you heard in a 1950s Boy Scout manual, forget it. Doesn't work. No cutting and sucking the wound. You're not going to get any venom out. If you have a
poison out,
nothing like that. You can't. In fact, there's devices that you can buy at Walmart and REI right now that are snake bite suction kits, They
Oh,
make it worse. They make it worse. So don't do any. It's an internal injury, right? So if you took a syringe of bleach and put it in your arm and then counted to a minute, however much time passes, you're not going to do any. You need to go to the hospital. That's it. So that's why from our organization, we usually don't have a list of here's all the things you do if you're bitten by a rattlesnake. It is put all of your effort and time and energy into getting help from emergency services, because the only thing that's going to help you is antivenom. Something I should address too is because that's a common thing. This happens every day. People say to bring children's Benadryl for yourself or your dogs to buy time. It does not work at all. In fact, the top doctors that design snakebite protocols right now at National Snakebite Support strongly recommend against using Benadryl. So if that shows up in your feed as something to use, doctors disagree.
okay, let's talk about the dogs.
Mm-hmm.
They're obviously, dogs are a little bit more curious,
Yeah.
and you never know what your dog's going to do. As a dog owner, what should you be conscious of, and what do you do if you guys encounter a snake, and what happens if your dog gets bit?
Yeah. So 3 things on that then. So the first thing is, dogs don't do as well as people. And part of that is where they are bitten. And this tells you much of what you need to know to avoid having your dogs bitten by a snake. Dogs don't tend to be bitten on the chest or the paw. They're bitten on the face, which means the snake didn't surprise them. They saw a snake and then they went to get the snake. So this is a big important thing, because there's not many people that are going to, there's a snake, I'm going to go put my nose on. I mean, there's some guys, but dogs are different. They're going to go do that. And it's because they don't know what a snake is. They don't know what a rattlesnake is. There's no evolutionary history there between them. So there is something called rattlesnake aversion training. We don't do this, but there's lots of people that do this. We recommend a company in Cave Creek called Rattlesnake Ready, rattlesnakeready.com. They're great at it. And all this is, it teaches dogs to avoid rattlesnakes. It's not something to play with. It's not something to attack. That works well at home and on trails. But when people are hiking with their dogs, we did polling of veterinary clinics and with individuals whose dogs have been bitten by rattlesnakes to understand the circumstances where these bites happen. And more than 90% of the bites that happen to dogs can be removed by just using a leash. I saw a video yesterday on a hiking group where someone was wondering what holes in the ground were, and they had a couple of their dogs off leash, sticking their heads in those holes, wondering what could these holes be. I'm like, well, that looks like a good way to lose a dog to me, and then a completely optional one. So it doesn't matter how good you think your dog's recall is, and I know it's more fun for them, but a dog can die from a rattlesnake bite. So you have to weigh those things. And if a dog is bitten, same thing, emergency veterinary clinic that administers antivenom. There's, for some reason, a lot more misinformation in the veterinary community about what to do. There are vets that will just give pain meds and Benadryl and antibiotics, things like that. So I'm not a vet, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But I would research this from people that are experts in this field. They say that none of those things are. The only thing that's going to counteract venom is antivenom. And just because a dog isn't yelping doesn't mean it's going to survive. So for homeowners, I would say do that work in advance. Figure out which 24-hour vets are available in your area that administer antivenom, and have that number ready so you're not Googling at 2:00 in the morning or something like that. Like, just be ready.
And well, let's talk about dogs on leashes, but also taking your kids out.
Yeah.
Go hiking, not letting them run off the trails and poking cactuses and all that kind of stuff, correct?
Yeah. Keep, just like dogs, keep your kids not literally on a leash. I mean, you can, but just to tell them what the situation is. I think the easiest way to look at it for me, and I'm a father, I have an 8-year-old daughter. She goes looking for snakes with me. There's something on my mind all the time, is to treat it like you would, you don't want your kids to be impaled by cactus too. You don't want your kids running into a cholla or like sticking into a saguaro. It's the same thing. Stay on trails, pay attention to where they're going. If you got a little kid and they're still tripping a little bit on the trail and you see some area that looks like it, hold their hand. Like, just be aware of their presence and your presence, and don't let them get into situations that could be risky. And talk to them about it too. This is an issue that this is why one of the reasons that so many people are scared of snakes is that it's hard for parents to talk to their kids about something that's dangerous, potentially like a snake, without injecting fear. And making your child scared of snakes does not make them more safe from snakes.
Right.
So I would separate those things out. Talk to them about awareness, talk to them about how to identify snakes and how to leave them alone, but make sure to do it in a way that doesn't also make them fearful of snakes. Because if you don't like, if you're feeling uneasy right now and having a hard time with hiking because you don't like snakes, you don't want to pass that to your kids.
Right.
So it's a very complicated situation.
Makes sense. What about the craziest midnight snake call you ever got?
The craziest midnight calls are kind of literal in that sense. It's not, you'd be surprised. It's not always that there's a snake in a house. This is where we learned that snakes become the proxy for all kinds of mental for delusions. So snakes are manifested when people, somebody tends to make up visions and see stuff like that. Snakes are often part of that. So there's a lot of calls that we go to in the middle of the night to go get a snake, and we find instead there is no snake. There's a human situation that's happening there. And those are always hard because we're not, I can go and I'll safely descend into a pit in the ground and catch 20 rattlesnakes and put them in my backpack. I am not qualified to go into somebody's house that you walk in there and he's armed and he's talking about all the snakes in the corner that aren't there. Those are always wild stories. Yeah, I mean, as far as the thing is it's hard to answer those a lot of times because we really like what we're doing. So it doesn't always it registers as something good if we get a call and like, oh, there was 20 rattlesnakes under this house. I'm like, cool, so it doesn't come to mind instantly.
Right.
But I'd say any of those where we go out and catch multiple snakes is the thing that stands out in our mind.
So would you say that you have a love for snakes or respect for them, or what's your relationship with snakes?
I mean, all the above. I really enjoy snakes as animals. I respect them as, I don't want to die at work. Okay. So I'm not giving anyone any advice that I don't take myself on this stuff, and I know what they are, but it's similar. I think, one of the things that's challenging for me personally and for our team is the amount of hate that comes in for the animals and often for ourselves. It's a weird thing is that there's a lot of people that will use their fear of snakes and forget that they're talking to people. Right. So we get up every day and I answer my hate mail first thing just so I can kind of get through that and move on through the day. But what it gives me is just there's such an incredible sense of purpose in all this, not just to say like it's the same task. Keeping snakes safe and keeping people and dogs safe, it's the same task. And the more that we kind of take that on and learn to appreciate these animals, we feel more and more and have more evidence that anybody, even if they grew up hating snakes or wanting to kill them or killing them or just being terrified of them, the way to keep them the most safe and feel better about all this too is to learn about them. So it's this feedback cycle that keeps going.
And so people have this fear and hate of snakes because maybe they don't understand why rattlesnakes are even, what is their purpose?
Yeah. I mean, people don't, so it's an interesting thing too. And that's hard to answer because if you're a naturalist, if you're somebody that is interested in natural systems, then the question of what do they do for us? To what purpose for humans do they fulfill that justifies their existence is a very hard one to answer. That's more of a question for philosophers because I don't need, for something to exist, doesn't necessarily need that. But I can say for people, if rattlesnakes didn't exist, we would miss them. And not because you want to see snakes, is that this has been answered before. So there's a misconception out there. It's like, why don't you kill all the venomous snakes? Because the non-venomous snakes will just carry the slack. They'll eat the rodents. They'll do the things. And that's not the way nature works. Each of these animals there's a reason why multiple species of rattlesnakes coexist together in the same places. They occupy different niches. They specialize in different things. And one of the biggest things that they do for us that we never see is they help keep rodent-borne and tick-borne disease under control because they eat a lot of rodents. And when they eat a lot of rodents, they eat the parasites of those ticks too. So a really easy example of that is one of the reasons that Lyme disease exploded in the East when it did. And it became such a problem is because of the intentional extirpation, the killing off of timber rattlesnakes in those areas. And now you see those problems showing up in Texas where they still just, hit every problem with a hammer. And so they have plague, Lyme disease, Lone Star disease, like all kinds of these problems here. So there's many things that rattlesnakes do for us just as a part of our ecosystem that we may never even know about too. But that's the biggest one. That's the thing.
In other words, don't kill the rattlesnake that's in your garage. Call you guys.
Yeah, I wouldn't, because the snake is not the problem. The snake is a symptom of the problem. The problem is you have all your stuff stored against the back wall. You never change it. It's in the same location. You don't visit that thing. You have a hole in the garage door. If someone kills that snake, it tends to stop the thinking of what happens next, right? And then there's just going to be more snakes. There's a saying that I hear every day from somebody that just calls us out because I don't think they understand what they're saying. And they say, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to listen to what you're saying because I've lived here for 20 years and I kill 10 rattlesnakes out by my old shed every year. Is working fine for me." And I'm like, "Do you hear what you said? You find 20 rattlesnakes a year by your shed and you never think it's the shed?
Why? Yeah.
Maybe what's wrong with the shed?" We don't do that with anything else. Like if we move in next to a freeway and we have kids, we don't start shooting at cars as they pass by. We build a fence. We talk to our kids about going in the freeway. We put our dog on it. I mean, prevention is easy. It's common sense. But for some reason, just with rattlesnakes and a few other things, we'd only want to act after the problem has existed. So that's a challenge.
Yeah. Do you yourself have like a pet rattlesnake, pet snake?
See these boxes behind me?
I was going to say.
Actually, I have somebody here I can show you. I just got done with the presentation, so I can give it to you. I can show you. So first off, I can say these are not pets. These are animals that and I make that distinction because also along the theme of also not wanting to die, I also don't name my snakes either because I know like Fluffy won't kill you, but Crotalus scutellatus will mess you up. So I'll show you in the box. He's in a box. I'm not holding it. This is a black-tailed rattlesnake.
So is that one of the more species that is common in Arizona, obviously?
Yeah. So this snake can be found anywhere that there's mountains, all the way from the tallest ones down to sea level. You can hear it rattling, I think, a little bit. Don't know if you can, but
for sure.
So later on, yeah. So it's in this box, so it's a lot quieter than it would be otherwise. But this is one of the really common ones that people see around here. Cover them up, or else he's just going to rattle the whole time. But we keep about 40 rattlesnakes, so about 60 across our organization, and we use these for different things. So one is education. We use our funding that we get from doing relocation calls and building snake fences to educate the public, to tell you a lot of things I'm telling you right now. We used to talk a lot in nature centers, but now I would much rather be in an HOA community room talking to scared homeowners because they just spend a bunch of money on the house. They should be able to enjoy their backyard.
And so that's something that HOA communities or whatever professionals like us at Remax that you would come out and educate us so that we can educate our clients.
We do it all the time. It's not a sales pitch. Someone wants to call us afterwards, but this is the way that we market, to be totally honest, is that we know a lot about these animals and we don't need to give some used car sales pitch to try and sell our stuff. We're not trying to do that. We just try to have the information as people that know these animals very well and study and research and publish on these animals. It's the easiest way to help people is just to address their fear, acknowledge that it exists for a reason, and then give them tools to overcome it.
Okay. And do you have what's your vision for your company for the next 5 years? Do you have any big projects?
Well, sure. I can tell you about some of them. So one of the things and this is easy to talk about because it's very hard to replicate. We have a tremendous amount of data. We co-authored a couple of papers within the last decade on the way that land cover use changes throughout the valley. and the type of landscaping that tends to appeal to rattlesnakes and which type doesn't. And every time we go catch a rattlesnake, there's a reason why it's there. So we're compiling that together to start to create some new projects that homeowners can use to landscaping schemas and that kind of thing. And we just launched a new one. It's a free service. It's a snake identification service. It's just azsnake.info, and allows any user to upload a photo, answer a couple of questions, and it'll come to our team and we'll tell you what the snake is and anything you want to know about it, answer any questions. And it's not AI, it goes to our team.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I'm sure that will be very comforting. So I can foresee in the very near future, we have things on our offer to purchase, like swimming pool barriers. I could see that coming down the pipe as far as the rattlesnake fencing and all that kind of stuff being on the
That's something we would love. I mean, the challenge right now is that other than just in our documentation, this doesn't exist anywhere officially of like what a good rattlesnake fence is and what isn't. And we're not a nonprofit; we're a private company. So there's obvious conflicts of interest of saying we're the only ones that are doing it right. I can claim that, but you can't turn that into something. So we're working on some of that right now. We're about to begin a study just to show the efficacy of the standards that we use for this. And then from that, we're going to be able to pursue some things that will make it so that having qualified snake fencing attached to a property is a bonus added on a listing.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a realtor in Arizona, I can tell you that is definitely one of the main things that people are concerned about, especially if they're a snowbird and coming from someplace else.
Yeah. So, well, we've given presentations that we do pretty often to realty companies too, just because we know it can be useful. We know, I'm sure you do too. There are sales that are made or not based on how that question is answered. Hey, are there any rattlesnakes here? Like, I don't know. I mean, and so we would never release this, but we have data on we know where rattlesnakes are and where they're not. And a lot of that time too, it's just how you answer the questions. Like, yes, there's rattlesnakes here. What we find, unfortunately, is that there's a lot of people that say, no, there's not. And then the homeowners realize that there are, sometimes on move-in day. So it doesn't help anybody to hide the information, but it doesn't mean you need to not answer that question. There's lots of easy ways to address it. So, I mean, speaking of something that you mentioned earlier, I forgot to mention of how homeowners can tell if their snake fencing is good or not, just from the get-go if they go there. That 1/4 inch gap size, a ballpoint pen, just a regular Bic pen, can fit through the 1/2 inch size that a lot of bad fencing is, but will not fit through a 1/4 inch. So get a pen, walk around the perimeter of your property, and if you can fit that big pen through any aspect, any opening that is lower than 3 feet, then a rattlesnake can get in.
The baby ones. Very interesting. Thank you so much for coming on the show this morning. It was super educational. I hope we can talk offline and try and work towards something that comes on our forums for the rattlesnake fencing.
Certainly happy to help.
Okay, super. Well, have a great rest of your day. I'm sure you have a busy day out there saving Arizona and saving the snakes.
All right. Nice talking to you.
You too. Bye-bye.